Being a total shoot-'em-ups fan, I've played through quite a few of them, both vertical and horizontal. I tend to bend more towards vertical, and I think that orientation has been more successful over the course of the genre. Not saying the horizontal ones aren't any less badass, but usually, people tend to pick one type over the other, or one style becomes more popular. Thus, we come to Cave's 2010 horizontal shoot-'em-up, Akai Katana, one of only 4 horizontal releases that Cave ever did, and was their second to last game released overall. The storyline is simplistic enough, I guess. In the historical age of Taisho, which occurred in the early 20th century in Japan, sees large advancements in industry and economic growth. People discover a new mineral that is named guiding ore, which becomes a very good energy production replacement for coal. But this ore isn't just any old rock. When forged into a sword, aptly named a guiding katana, certain soldiers attain psychic powers. It's further stated that when the katana is used to kill another human being, the blade glows red, and tremendous power is gifted to the user. Must be the same process that forged Akujiki from Shinobi. Damn evil blades. Emperor Basho abuses this great power to expand his empire, forming an elite squadron known as the Ten Sons. However, there are those within the Emperor's force who disagree with what's going down. They decide to rebel and fight back against the tyranny. A pilot named Kikayo, who ironically is the Emperor's own son, leads this rebellion, and sacrificed himself to become the ultimate weapon of justice. He's followed by 3 pilots, Tsubaki, his sister Batan, and lastly Shion. Now, not to skip ahead, but Kaikyo isn't actually a pilot, he's a phantom. But we'll get to that. Off we go. Now, since I'll be reviewing the Japanese Xbox 360 release, and it contains 3 different versions of the game, I'll be focusing the review around the first 2 versions, Origin and Slash. There is a third version, called Climax, that is pretty much like Origin with just minor changes. Covering Origin mode first. This is the arcade port of the original game. You pick one of 3 planes, each having a different pair associated with them. One person is the pilot, the other is the phantom. Got it? Okay, here's how it works. Besides each craft having a different firing pattern, and their gun pod acting differently, basically you shoot enemies, which release these little green E-orbs that you collect. This powers up your phantom mode energy bar up at the top of the screen. You hit the switch button on the controller and you turn into phantom mode. Now, in this mode is where the main scoring mechanic happens, and pretty much the most fun too. You'll notice if you just sit there, enemy bullets just continuously bounce off you. What you want to do is hold down the fire button, thereby producing this big energy cone in front of you, which turns enemies and bullets into the gold scoring medals. Starting to sound a little familiar? The medals will continue to orbit you as long as you stay in phantom mode. Now, what you're trying to do here is make the medals, as many as you can, pass through enemies or enemy bullets. This makes the medals grow in size and thus give a higher score per each one. Once they reach maximum size, switch back to normal fighter mode and all the medals around will be collected, kicking up your score. That's kind of the simple version of the scoring in Origin or Climax mode. There's other little nuances, but that's the quick and easy version. Just rinse and repeat. Let us transition to the other main gameplay mode available on Akai Katana Shin, which is the Xbox 360 version. Slash mode! This version is unique to the Xbox 360 release, and doesn't have a PCB counterpart. Much like the red and white arcade versions of the game don't have home versions. In this mode, you can still choose between 3 different planes and pairs, but the scoring mechanic is totally different. I mean, the main scoring mechanic is still to collect gold medals, but how you do it is what makes Slash mode my preferred mode to play in, and I've found to be the more enjoyable of the 3 different modes. Starting out, you have a small amount of energy as before, and then, when tapping the shot button, enemies start giving you these light green swirly yin-yang symbols. These are the steel orbs, and as you collect more, you'll notice a rotating red ring around your fighter, with Japanese symbols that light up the more orbs you collect. The symbols represent your katana orbs, which are badass, and are used as part of the main scoring element in this mode. Once you have enough katanas, it's up to you. The maximum is 16, and the circle becomes wreathed in flames. You switch to Phantom mode and hold down the fire button. This in turn fires the large orbs around you straight in any direction you want. As the orbs pass through enemy bullets, or enemies themselves, katana steel is generated and returned to the player, forming your actual phantom swords. Now we're talking! Floating around you is a total badass swarm of deadly phantom katana swords. What you want to do to maximize your score is to get as much shit on the screen as possible, or at least in the path of your katanas, as they too only fly in a straight line once you release them. Fire those babies off, and anything they touch gets converted to gold medals. I forget the actual mathematical formula, but I believe the hit counter on each sword is like 1 hit per 1/16 of a second. I could be wrong. As your swords slice through everything and the medals are generated, you'll notice they start out huge, and as they fall off the screen, decrease in size. Bigger medals mean bigger scores. So, after you fire the katanas out, you want to kind of fly along with them and collect the huge medals as they're generated. You do have your hit chain in this mode, and it does figure into your overall scoring. However, it's not as paramount as in, say, the Dodonpachi series. So, again, the quick and easy version. Collect enough steel orbs to have a full spread, as I call it, of large orbs. Keep your hit chain going, fire them off to generate the swords, fire them again with tons of bullets and or large enemies or mid-bosses on screen to generate insane amounts of medals, fly along with them, rinse and repeat. Just watching this type of scoring in videos is what totally sold me on picking this game up in the first place, even though it was almost a given since I'm such a big Cave fan. Okay, onwards. The game was programmed by Shinobu Yagawa, and you guys know I'm not exactly the biggest fan of Yagawa games. Fortunately, his style has been somewhat streamlined in this game, almost to the extent that most of the time I forget I'm playing a Yagawa game in the first place. In fact, this might be why I prefer Slash mode, as it plays much more like a game programmed by Akai instead. If you haven't noticed yet, the graphics. Cave blew this game out of the water in terms of graphics. Unique to this game, it plays in an almost 3/4 isolinear perspective. It isn't straight on horizontal, and it isn't top down, it's in between. All the minute details, from the planes, to ships, to bosses, it's total Cave, totally at 100%. Speaking of which, bosses. They're all humans, and I'm unfamiliar with their personal backstories or what their motivations are, unfortunately. Each one has 2 types of attacks. Their own personal attacks, with the usual bullet spreads and whatnot, but each also has a unique attack based on heavy machinery. From trains, to an aircraft carrier, to fucking battleships. Again, try to appreciate the details of these machines. I mean, without dying if possible. Unfortunately, much like ESP Galuda 2, the boss battles can drag on for a bit longer than I normally like. A lot of enemies also have a simple laser array attack in various forms, which I thought felt a little out of place considering the time frame, but I've come to like them, as they're not too intrusive on gameplay. There are bombs in the game, as that's a given, and they function like every other Cave game. Akai Katana was released on Cave's CV1000D arcade PCB, as was previously with Dodonpachi Daifukatsu. Greatest Cave game ever! And is similar to their normal SH3 hardware with the exception of extra RAM. The soundtrack is outstanding, not being composed by Cave regular Manobu Namiki, but instead Ryo Umimoto, who tragically was killed shortly before the 360 version was released. Mainly featuring heavy electric guitars combined with good drum beats, and even some traditional Japanese instruments. It's an interesting fusion of musical styles. My favorites are probably Stage 2, and Stage 5. The sound effects are also really well done, with explosions, small voice samples, and other miscellaneous things really adding to the entire experience of the game. Akai Katana is truly one of Cave's gems, on almost every level. It is rather on the short side as far as total game length goes, but still very enjoyable. With repeated playthroughs, as with most Cave titles, you really begin to appreciate the scoring mechanics and continue to improve your playing. Besides the Japanese Xbox 360 release, Rising Star Games have released a port to the US and European markets as well, in English. I own the original Japanese version because, well, I'm a Cave purist like that. If you're into shoot 'em ups, or for some crazy reason you've never played or at least heard of Akai Katana, don't pass it by. It's one of the greats from pretty much the greatest shoot 'em up company that ever existed. Thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, go check it out.
皆さん、またの出撃をお待ちしております。
Don't forget to check out my Twitch account for live shoot 'em up action, my real-time playthrough videos, MAME Mondays, and other fun gaming videos as well.